This episode is sponsored by ODP Business Solutions, built to address all your facility needs. Visit odpbusiness.com today. In sales, everyone talks about the hustle of prospecting, cold calls, outreach emails, and knocking on doors. But what about when the opportunity comes to you? Well, many salespeople underestimate the power of incoming leads, especially those generated through web forms. These leads are often treated as low effort, yet mishandling them can mean losing deals that are practically on the table. Today, we're going to flip the script and focus on how to maximize every incoming lead. And to guide us, we're joined by Troy Harrison, a regular guest, a leading sales strategist and trainer who knows what it takes to turn inquiries into long-term clients. I hope you do, Troy, know how to do that.
Sometimes, Jeff, yeah.
Good to see you, Troy.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me again.
Well, let's get into it. This is an important topic, but maybe people don't pay the attention that they should, and that's what you want to get into. Why is it so critical today?
Well, the first thing we have to understand is that when a new prospect reaches out and contacts you, whether it's a phone call or more commonly the online lead form, that is the absolute peak of their interest. They are excited enough about whatever it is that you have to offer. They're interested. They're holding up their hand saying, "Hey, yo, I'm over here. Let's talk." And we need to capitalize on the peak of their interest. Several years ago, there was a study done on incoming lead response. And what it showed is that an incoming lead form that was responded to, and by the way, before I actually explain this, let's define a response. A response is a personal one-to-one phone call. Okay, a response is not that automatic web lead form saying, "Oh, somebody will be back to you," or a response isn't even responding by email to those lead forms. A response is picking up the telephone and calling somebody voice to voice. And now that we've defined that term, a lead that is responded to with that personal phone call within 10 minutes of its submission has 5 times the chance of closing as one responded to within 30 minutes. In turn, 30 minutes has 10 times the chance of closing as one responded to in 2 hours. And it just scales out from there, where by the time you get out to 24 hours, you're basically back at a cold call. And so the time that we respond to leads is absolutely critical, and the way that we do it is critical too. One of the dumbest things salespeople do, and I see it. One of the dumbest things salespeople do, they get an email alert. They look, they go, lead form. I'll get to it in a little while. That's insane. We spend our lives trying to get people to talk to us, and then here is somebody saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you," and we're going, "Yeah, I get to it."
As the modern workplace evolves, organizations must evolve as well. They need a partner that understands this new world of work. We are that partner. We are ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot Business Solutions Division. More than just office supplies, ODP is a force for change, helping address technology transformation, sustainability, innovative workspace design, cleaning, break room, and more, making organizations everywhere say, "Oh," when they see how much more we can do. ODP Business Solutions.
But what we discover is that speed of response is absolutely essential. When somebody sends in a web lead, you've got to get back with them right then, if at all possible. I tell salespeople the only thing that takes precedence over responding to an incoming lead is being on a sales call. And if you're on a sales call, you shouldn't have your phone visible to you anyway. But when you get that incoming lead, I'll tell them, stop what you're doing, pick up the phone, call them, say, "Hey, this is so and so. How can I help you?" It's funny. I get incoming leads quite a bit, and I respond to them with phone calls whenever possible. Uh, and it's amazing how surprised people are to hear an actual human being person calling them and saying, "Hey, how can I help you?" And I will guarantee you that speed of response has helped me close deals that I probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Now, here's what a lot of the salespeople watching this are going to say. They're going to say, "Troy, a lot of these leads come in and are crap. Okay, they're not qualified. They don't they don't meet our standards, they're not good customers, whatever. Okay, there's something to that. I have always said that one of the reasons a good prospecting program is essential is that you get to choose your own customers, you get to choose your own prospects. You don't if you're just sitting back and relying on leads. However, a good, smart salesperson will have three good qualifying questions, and I'll say three good customer-friendly qualifying questions that they can just pull up out of their mind at a moment's notice. In other words, whether it's somebody calling them or whether it is a lead form that they're responding to, they can quickly jump into that mode and ask those three questions that tells them, is this a good fit or is it not? And even I have those, and if it's not a fit, then it's best to politely say, you know what, this isn't a fit. And if you know somebody to refer it to, great. But don't just leave that person hanging. Leave a positive impression. You never know when a person is going to go from a tiny company that wouldn't be qualified for your services to a large company that's a great prospect. But if you've ignored them, they may remember that. People remember getting snubbed, and they're not going to be real super excited about doing business with you. Remember, you are a brand ambassador for your company. So it's very essential, like I said, respond quickly, have those qualifying questions, and then based on the response to those questions, you go into one of two modes. Either one, you go into a lead nurturing mode, which is where you're now setting up a substantive appointment, or you're going into a disqualifying mode, which is where thank them, be very polite, thank them for calling, let them know, look, unfortunately, this isn't a fit, doesn't meet our minimums, whatever. If something changes in the future, I would love to talk to you. Log them into the CRM as non-qualified. Don't ever forget the logging into the CRM part. But the way that you respond to incoming leads, like I said, not only is it an opportunity to sell that person, it's an opportunity to make a good brand impression. So be quick, qualify, be courteous, and move them either out or into your sales process.
I have a couple questions.
You always do.
Yeah. So you mentioned responding back to the lead by phone.
Mhm.
I know when I do a web form, I'm probably looking for information, but not a phone call. How do you deal with that?
Actually, studies show that that phone call is the absolute most effective way. Yeah, even if they are most of the time, in my experience and in the experience of the people that I've trained and coached, the vast majority of the time, when you do call them back, they're surprised and they're willing to have a conversation. It's very rare that you
Hmm.
see somebody saying, "Look, I didn't want a phone call."
Well, I
That's
think
that's a distinct minority.
when you do the web form, you might be thinking that, but that's happened to me. And the phone call, you're right. It was like a person.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Do some industries do better at this than others? Like, I was looking for insurance one time. I did a web form. My phone blew up. Phone calls. Too much.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I would say probably that industries like well, honestly, I'm going to say that the B2C world does this a lot better than the B2B world as a generalization, because when you asked that question, I was trying to think of any of the B2B industries that I've worked with that I thought were really great at it, and I struggle to think of any that are really good at it.
Okay. That's
I
sobering.
don't know if that's because B2B salespeople get more jaded. I don't know. But no, I am not in the business to business world. Nothing is jumping out at me as an industry that does really well at it.
You talked about web forms. As a salesperson, you want as much information as you can get.
Mhm.
What are the skeleton of a what's the skeleton of a web form that you think would work?
Good question. Um, Definitely, obviously, the name, phone number, company, title, email address you'll have. Because here's the other thing. You want good information, but you don't want that information to become a barrier. How did you find out about us, I
Hmm.
think is a good one, and I would have a drop down on that. And then I would have comments about I would just open form comments about how can we help you. What I have found is that almost everyone who fills out a web form that is legitimate, they're going to put legit comments in there.
Yeah, I think how I see it is you don't want your customers to work. And when you have a form that's difficult to navigate, you're making them
Yeah.
work. So, Bill, one of the pet peeves I have is when you have a drop down that wants the country. And if you're in the United States, you have to scroll down. It doesn't populate.
Oh, drives me nuts. Absolutely drives me nuts.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like I'm in the United States, you're in the United States, that should be the first one.
exactly. All right.
But no, and actually that is a good question because I have seen web forms that get really exhaustive.
Hmm.
And here's the other thing you want to think about. If you're receiving this web form, you're probably not the only one. Okay,
Good
they are
point.
probably looking at multiple sources and submitting multiple web forms. So in many cases, the company that responds with the highest degree of urgency, you are sending a subtle message to your customer that says, I will be this urgent when we are doing business, not when we are just trying to get the business. And that has value. One of the things, and I'm going to take a little tangent here, but by now you ought to be used to that. Um, when companies ask for proposals from multiple companies, there are salespeople out there who think, well, I want to be last. And I've always thought that's stupid. I want to be first for two reasons. Number one, I'm setting a standard and I'm setting an expectation that I'm going to be quick. Number two, in that case, first one in is the first one who has the chance to ask for the business. And I have walked out with a signed contract many a time when the other people hadn't even submitted proposals yet because of that urgency. Everything we do when a customer holds up their hand should demonstrate excellence and a sense of urgency. That's why, and I think that is a subtext why that quick response works.
Hmm. These are people who need you now and want you to respond.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And as soon as they click that send button, they want it yesterday. That's a nature of the business. Whether you call it the Amazon effect or whatever, that is the nature of business today. As soon as the customer gives you a positive indication, they want engagement from you. So give them that engagement.
All right. Any final words?
No, I mean, this is one of the things that we will cover in my program on prospecting at the ISSA show in November. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it because most of it's about outreach, but you do have to always talk about this, and we will talk about it. But I guess the only thing that I would add is even though we've just spent this time talking about those incoming leads, as a salesperson, you never want to put yourself in the position of waiting for those.
Mhm.
Be proactive, prospect, and then integrate these people into your sales process and sales funnel.